Strange and the spooky, adventurous and loony, they're all together ooky, the Bond family. Their trips are amazing when people come to see 'em. They really are amazing, the Bond family. History, ghost, art. So put on a witch's shawl on, a seat so you can relax on. We're gonna play a call on the Bud family. Alright guys, it is Friday. And that means we are almost to the wedding renewal. The vow renewal, I guess I should say. I don't know. That term is weird and I keep getting it wrong, so I'm making up new words and we're just gonna deal with it. So we've got I don't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, 2 lines on Monday, 1 renewal if our that'll work, which it should. Fingers crossed. And then 1 after the renewal, and a super secret surprise, which hopefully you guys will enjoy. There's something else, but I can't remember what it is, so you are just going to have to wait until I remember. In the meantime, we got a cemetery walk, which I have decided need to be renamed because we don't do a lot of walking. I am calling them cemetery stories now because that's what happens. Is you get stories of people in the cemetery, which is kind of fun. I like the idea. I think they're fun. We had a couple this year, a few we couldn't go to but wanted to. And so anytime we get a chance to go to one of these things, we will. And you guys are going with us. And that is the end of that. This has been a history. How it applies is up to you. But, you know, we are digitally preserving history. What kind of history? All kinds of history. Some of it's ours, some of it's the states, some of it's other states. But all of it's history in one way or another. Our race today is zombies because we are going to a cemetery. Are you ready? Here we go. Showtime. I forgot the words there for a minute. Shadow time. Oh, hang on a minute. My brain broke. You support me, so I support you. I cannot remember the words. Oh my goodness, give me a minute. I have to look at my words. Alright, let's try this again. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for our friends. Let's see who it is today. You know, it'd be important if I remembered my words. I don't know why I forgot them, but I did today. Set. Start. There we go. Alright, so we've got Bobby there. There's Popcorn. There's Wanda. There's Trainer. There's Redhead. There's Not Daily. There's Sea Tripping. There's Giraffe. There's Lower. Susan. Tammy. A-Space. Lynch. Uma. Hillbillies, Josie. Those are our zombies are way back apparently. There's Jason and Sea Tripping and Trainer. Who else? There's Mine Folk. Mine Fork, not Folk. I'm sorry. There's M and J. There's Brad. There's Love and Live. Let's see who else. There's Laura, Kira. Oh, it's Uma. Hold on a minute. Alright, this is Miss Uma's channel. Excuse me. This is a vlog. She's at Kay right now. She's got some shorts. I think also music and poems. No lies recently, but this one's music, music poetry. So this is poetry. So if you're excuse me, into poetry and music, it's a good place to check out. Like, share, comment, and have a good day.
Well, but I didn't have, I just finished doing My Fair Lady and
Now you're going to get hits from the 80s and 90s.
Billy Joel.
Oh, better yet.
Darn it, I don't know any of those ones.
Was Lady Gaga in the 80s?
Oh, heck no.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't a thing.
Give me my best.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Katie Wood.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
All right, that sounds much better. If you can you please come together just a little closer in the center here? We do have a little bit of a breeze going on. It makes it very difficult to hear, even with the microphone. And those who are presenting tonight, if you can hold the microphone just on your chin the way I am, it'll turn with your head, and we don't lose the microphone at all. Because last night we would be talking, and all of a sudden you have this. It comes back to the microphone again. So that would help if you just keep it on your chin. Somebody thinks I'm funny. My name is Billy Leroy. I'm blessed to be one of the 6 individuals who keep this place looking amazing. So they call me the manager. I'd rather be the feet on the ground. I'd rather take that title over manager any day. So just some little facts about the cemetery review. How many of you are first timers in the Rose Hill Cemetery? Excellent. Quite a few of you. I'm the last face you'll see. But up here, I just want to point a few things out for you. Yesterday I was going to do it, but I completely forgot because we had a batteries issue. But if you look at some of these headstones and they come to a point, as you see right behind me, they look like you have a pyramid on top. These individuals have been associated with the South during the Civil War. The idea of this, and they said, is to keep those Yanks from sitting on my headstone when they need to rest. That is a true statement, believe it or not. So if you look at some of the headstones that have looks like a pyramid on top, now you know some history behind that.
Fun.
Also, if you happen to see a lamb on a headstone, everyone knows that's because an infant or a young child is passed on. Also, you'll see me standing next to this tree stump, and there's also one behind me, right over here. Now, if the tree stump is tall, that just lets you know that the individual lived a long life. If the tree stump is in the middle, they died at middle age. If the tree stump is short, they died at a young age. So just letting you know some of those facts. It was asked me just a second ago, what's with the big iron gate around the space that has nobody in it? Well, there's a gate on that one, so it's okay, but usually if an iron gate has no door or fence on it, way to get in or out, it's because whatever's buried in there would not be marked, so you don't know what's in there, and they don't want it to get out. But this one does have a gate on it, so it's okay.
Keep it in.
So that's just some information about the cemetery. I was very happy to take this position when it opened up. My very first job as a young man on the Indian Reservation, which is Rosebud, not Pine Ridge, Rosebud. My very first job was actually a grave digger. So it's kind of ironic that I ended up here. But we're going to get this started for you. The first individual to come up and speak for you is Max G. Merchant.
Hello.
Hello.
And welcome. My name is Frank Baker Jr. And you might say that I grew up along with Spearfish, or at least that's what the Queen City Mail said when it commemorated the 71 years that I lived here in what I thought was the most beautiful place on earth. Now, I was born in Chicago, but I came west in 1877 on my mother's lap, along with my two older siblings, Joseph and Margaret. My father, Frank Baker Sr., had come to the Black Hills to prospect for gold, and so we came out west to join him. Now, Father soon realized that land was more valuable than gold and considerably easier to find. So we lived in Lead City for a short time and then moved to the Crow Peak Bench and started homesteading there. Now, as children, we only made it to town once, maybe twice a year, because in those early days, no one had horses. No one. Our main form of transportation was oxen. And I am here to tell you, those beasts were slow. We lived 8 miles from town, and it would take all day to make that round trip. But oh, when we got here, what a treat. Now, later on, we got horses to pull the lumber wagon, so that trip to town was a little bit faster. And the home stretch, you could pick up speed because those horses knew they were heading back to the barn, and so they put a little spice in their step. As we got older, Father started feeling poorly, so he turned the farm over to my younger brother, George, and he and Mother moved into the Overland House, which is the hotel which was housed in the building that known as Restaurant is currently located in today. Father was the proprietor and manager, and the family entertained the guests and enjoyed meeting new folks. In 1898, Father passed away. Now, I had already moved into town and started a tailoring shop, so I helped Mother run the store and managed my own business. Now, over time, I added other lines of merchandise to the inventory, including shoes and such, and kept that up for quite some time. Now, I moved the store over on Main Street, and it was located where Pink 629 does business today. Now, the good book says it is not good for man to be alone, and I took that to heart. So in 1906, I married Gertrude Dunn, and together we successfully managed that store for many, many years. Now, meanwhile, back on the farm, Brother George and his wife had 12 kids. Sort of a baker's dozen, if you will. Sadly, not all of them survived, but most of them did, to the point that the little country school out there was called the Baker School. Now, in 1943, I decided to reduce inventory, if you will, and just sell shoes. And so I started the Baker Shoe Store. And then in 1948, I decided I'm going to build a 2-story, ultra-modern store on Hudson Street. Well, why not? I'd already built 2 homes for the family. As the kids grew up and moved out, Gertrude and I moved out of the Queen Victorian house that we had built earlier, and I built a house there on 8th Street. In fact, as you go up Jackson Boulevard, if you're going east, if you look to your right there on the intersection, is a nice little bungalow, and the garage sitting there was designed to hold our 2 Ford Model Ts. Ooh. And it has a garage door on the north end and a garage door on the south end. Now, the gossip in town was Frank Baker doesn't like to drive in reverse. Well, to a point, that's true. I don't see any point in looking backwards. You always look forward. You look ahead and move forward. Well, back to that store on Hudson Street. 1948. Wouldn't you know it, the day I moved in, the good Lord called me home. Just like that. So much is for the grand opening. More of a grand closing. Still in all, I had a good run. I helped Spearfish celebrate marriages, anniversaries, weddings, graduations, and such. Helped them mourn the dead from 2 world wars. I'd like to think that I had some part of helping a little community of 600 people grow and flourish, and farms and orchards and obviously natural beauty all around. It was a good place to call home. Now, I thank you for coming and for your kind attention, and I wish you the very best as you write your journey. Thank you.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
My given name is Amanda Pearl Smith, but I was known as Pearl throughout my life. I was born in 1893 in Aladdin, Wyoming. When my father passed away when I was 7, my mother moved with me and my 12-year-old brother to Hay Creek near Belfouche. When I was 18, I met Ed Moeller. We were married at the Methodist Parsonage in Spearfish on a beautiful spring day in early April 1912. Initially, Ed worked on a ranch near Aladdin until we could purchase the land for Moeller Ranch. Our ranch is located 9 miles west of Spearfish on Bear Creek, almost to the Wyoming border. It's fertile land. A windmill with a wooden water tank nearby supplied the water for the garden, horses, cows, sows, chickens, and young calves. Vegetables and fruit grew so well there that we had plenty to share with friends and our neighbors. We worked hard, and we enjoyed good food and a good life. Ed also worked for the Homestake Mining Company from time to time. He helped install the Homestake standpipes for the hydro plant above City Park. You can even see them from here on that ridge overlooking the mouth of Spearfish Canyon. They help reduce the water shock within the pipes feeding the plant. When the flow of the water changes, the height of the standpipes change. Ed was so proud to be part of that engineering achievement. In the early days of Spearfish, a lot of ranchers were only able to make it into town every couple of months or so. But that was not the case for us. Ed and I were raising 5 children, and we made it to town on a regular basis. I rarely missed a meeting of the Crow Peak Extension Club or a service at the Methodist Church. I always felt it was important to keep up a good social life, to help balance out the winter's cold and those darn spring blizzards. Although church services and socials were definitely a highlight, I always felt that being a member of the Crow Peak Extension Club was a very important part of my life as a member of the Spearfish community. The club was founded in 1925 and was the oldest extension club in Lawrence County. It focused its attention on teaching and telling all of us how to do homemaking in a better way, and instructed us on community issues. It really gave all of us a sense of community, which was important in the early days of homesteading, when living miles away from one's closest neighbor and burdened by life's endless chores on the farm could make a person feel isolated. The club gave us an opportunity to share and to learn and to help one another. And that community made us strong and helped us get through some hard times. My granddaughter wrote a poem in memory of me, and I would like to share a few of those lines with you now. Forgive me for appearing vain, but I cherish this poem as it really speaks to my life. You loved to view a sunset rare. You loved a flower garden fair. Of all the lovely things you saw, You viewed your friends the best of all. Many a meal at your home we did eat, delicious pastries, vegetables, and meat, grown in your garden with sweet loving care, everything with all of us you would gladly share. You are a gem, a pearl, if you please, one whom we'll cherish with fond memories.
Aw.
Well, I guess that about wraps it up. Thank you all for coming today. And remember to work hard so you can enjoy a good life.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is George Schulte of Schulte Mortuary up there in Deadwood. Tonight, I'm here to tell you a little bit about Arthur Henry's life. Now, Arthur came to our mortuary and under our care in 1939. Arthur was a black American, and he is buried here with his father Washington, his mother Charlotte, and his grandmother Susan Blackwood. And if you look over there at those pink balloons, that marks the grave site. Now Washington, or Wash as he was known back in those days, he was a teamster on the Jenny expedition back in 1875. That was 1 year before Custer and his expedition discovered gold in the area. Boy, that was quite a time. Other notables, you may recognize these names: Calamity Jane, Dr. Valentine McGillicuddy, and of course, California Joe. After the expedition, Wash settled with his family on a claim about 2 miles east of Spearfish. About that time, Arthur was 1 year old. Now, Wash always thought highly of education, and he wanted his son to go to school. And he did. Many years later, he enrolled in the Spearfish Normal School, and he graduated from there in 1898, along with 5 other young men and 16 young women.
Woo.
How about that? When he was at Spearfish Normal, he was a great athlete. He excelled in football and foot races. I tell you what, during the 4th of July celebrations back then, he won about every foot race they offered. He was quite a runner. After graduation, Arthur settled in a cabin about 3 miles east of Spearfish. Located there now are Pizza Ranch and the Baymont Inn. On his land, Arthur raised a lot of sheep, and he was the first black American to serve as a rural mail carrier in Lawrence County.
Very cool.
How about that? Now, in the winter of 1939, Arthur was found frozen to death in his cabin. The sheriff, the coroner, and I were dispatched to the cabin to investigate. When we arrived, we found Arthur's dog standing guard over its owner. Now, there are many whispered comments about Arthur's death, ranging from a heart attack to an unfriendly neighbor who was angry about Arthur's wandering sheep.
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy. But you know what? The most intriguing story is that someone showed up one night intending to steal Arthur's gold buried in the cabin.
Ooh.
Now, none of those stories have ever proven to be true. And the full story of his life and his death, we may never know. But we do pray that Arthur and his family have found rest and peace here in Rose Hill. That concludes my presentation tonight. I do thank you for your kind attention, and I do wish you a good night.
We'll move on to our next location, which is over by the shed. So it's just around this section. So if you head that way, we'll meet you over there with the next presenter.
The society of Black Hills pioneers has passed away. He was for many years a farmer and stockman on the Centennial Prairie. So read the headlines to my obituary in the Queen City Mail. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Cornelius Folsom Hood, born October 24th, 1848 at Chelsea, Vermont. I came from a large family and was the seventh of 12 children, all boys, except the last, finally a sister. I was known by most everyone as CF or Con. I left home when I was 15 and headed to Wisconsin, where I worked on a farm for 2 years before heading north and to work in the lumber camps of northern Minnesota for 3 years. Upon attaining my majority, I worked for several years as an engineer for the Northern Pacific Railroad. It was the discovery of gold in the Black Hills that brought me to these parts in 1876. I prospected for a while, then clerked for a store in Gayville, now Central City, and then worked in the stamp mills. In June of 1878, I filed on a homestead in Centennial Valley. Today that property is west of Exit 17 and the Sky Ridge Development and on the south side of Colorado Boulevard. In the spring of 1879, I went to Iowa and purchased a herd of dairy cows and trailed them back to my new home. I married Cora Bishop on March 21st, 1882 in Deadwood. We were blessed with 9 children, 7 sons, and 2 daughters. More about those cows a little later. I got a wild hare in 1894 and was the populist candidate from this county for one of 3 seats to the South Dakota House of Representatives. I ran a good race, came within 201 votes of taking out one of the 3 Republican victors, but it seems like when it comes to politics in Lawrence County, some things never change. In 1897, during a period of 7 months, I sold over 1,200 pounds of butter from 4 of those cows. At an average price of between 18 to 25 cents a pound, I thought that made a pretty darn good showing. Today, that would be the equivalent of right around 5,100 bucks. In 1900, I built the red barn that was, until just a few weeks ago, still visible from East Colorado Boulevard. I guess there are those who would say you can't let a 125-year-old barn stand in the way of progress, but I digress. In any event, I dug a ditch over 2,000 feet long from the spring south of the house and barn to pipe water into the barn to cool the milk and clean the milking equipment. For many years, the Spearfish to Deadwood stagecoach cut across our place. And if you would look atop the hill above that spring, you would find evidence of 3 teepee rings, which no doubt explained why it was not uncommon for the kids and me to find arrowheads and points on the place. Tragedy struck our family on the afternoon of Thursday, June 15th, 1914. Our 10-year-old son Otto was learning to ride his new bicycle. Some neighbors and I were slaughtering sheep, and one of the men stuck his killing knife into a post. Otto rode his bike full tilt against that sharp knife, the blade striking him just above the knee and severing his femoral artery. I got him into town as fast as I could while still trying to stop the bleeding, but the great loss of blood coupled with shock resulted in his death the next day at the Spearfish Hotel. After that, my dear Cora was just never the same. You know, parents aren't supposed to bury their children. We managed to carry on, but in 1920 I sold the farm and auctioned off my livestock and equipment and moved into town. Due to failing health, I spent the last 6 months of my life in bed, passing away on February 15th, 1928. My obituary said I had been a good citizen, an indulgent father, and a friend to the needy. I hope my dear Cora and surviving children were comforted by those kind words. I was laid to rest here at Bowes Hill in the family plot, close to my boy Otto. Thank you for your kind attention, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about my great-grandfather, Con Hood.
Howdy, y'all.
Howdy.
Well, that's how we say hello where I come from. My name is Martha, but my friends call me Maddie or Martha. Martha Jane Stanford Sampson. I was born in 1886 in Hilton, Oklahoma, to Charles Wesley and Elizabeth Jean Stanford, and my family tree will show that I had 10 siblings and 4 half-siblings. But what was not explained to me is the overlapping birth dates of all these siblings. Nope, I don't know what to think. But what I do know is that a half-sibling has one different parent. And if that's so, there was a lot going on. If you catch my drift. Well, in 1903, I married John King Sampson, and about a year later, after our first baby was born, John got to thinking he wanted to move clean out of Texas. He had lived close to his family long enough. And there were several things going on about then: gold mining, homesteading, railroads. And so we got on the train with our baby and went to Lead, South Dakota, where there was some gold mining going on. But John didn't much care about gold mining. It was hard work and dangerous, so he got to thinking about homesteading. And we headed to Montana to homestead. 10 years and 9 children later, well, 3 of our children did not survive. Well, we left Montana for spearfish, and I guess we'd been in spearfish about a year when John died. I was now a 42-year-old widow with 4 small children, ages 4 to 16. Our older boys lived on their own, but they helped me out as best they could. Well, you know, I had always filled out those census reports as housewife, but suddenly I was breadwinner. And as the only breadwinner in the family, I was eligible to apply for one of them WPA jobs. Luckily, there was a WPA sewing room in Spearfish. Well, I know you mainly hear about the menfolk and all the work they did for the WPA. But we women took our sewing machines, headed them, and hauled them over to the sewing rooms and made clothes for destitute families. Mending what was mendable. We made mattresses. And I made about $50 a month. Well, we planted a garden, we milked cows, raised chickens, and I helped families in the area do housework and cooking, and after working hard all day, I'd take the laundry home at night and return their laundry next day. I baked bread for the Spearfish Deadwood schools and applied my wares by way of the Spearfish Deadwood stagecoach. So, in 1944, I managed the legendary Valley Cafe.
Ooh.
And some of you may have tasted my cooking. I was famous for my pasties. You know, those savory little pouches with onions and such. And every year I headed up the kitchen for the annual pasty fundraiser at the Methodist Church. Well, my kids helped with odd jobs in the area and helped me with my deliveries. Well, beyond my wildest dreams, I went to Germany.
Oh, my.
With my daughter's family. My son-in-law served in the Air Force. I traveled with them for 8 years, returning to Spearfish about 1961, and, well, enjoyed living life another 20 years. Enjoying my family and community in these wonderful Black Hills. I was 96 years old when I passed, and some people say that the more you adapt, the more interesting you are. And I surely had a life of adapting. My children noted my obituary. What a great life she had. And I most certainly did. Well, thank you, folks, for listening to my story.
Believe we're old fools and tearing young arms. The tragedy of my early death and the effects born upon my husband and my young family. There is a possible explanation for my diminutive grave marker and only my first name and my middle initial, Grace D. Put in a plot of Kimballs with no apparent Kimballs in sight. It was like I was dropped amongst strangers. Let me explain and introduce you to my burial companions. My life began way back east in Hampton, Massachusetts in 1862. My maternal grandparents immigrated from Scotland and Ireland. And my paternal grandparents were immigrants from Nova Scotia and Canada. You might say I am a second-generation American. My early childhood memories, well, my people had a great interest amongst something called the Homestead Act of 1862. News of the discovery of gold in California had gotten most folks to expand their horizons, so to speak. And then, with gold discovered in South Dakota in 1870, and Custer's expedition confirmed it was true, well, the people that were going west were making travel plans. My travel plans have escaped me, but I do know that I was counted in the census of 1870 as living with my parents in Colorado. My school days also, I have a memory gap, but I do remember being a school teacher. Mostly women who had completed upper elementary classes could teach the younger children. I ended up in Hay Creek, Wyoming, married to Frank Winthrop Campbell in 1893 at the age of 30. Oh, we faced some challenging conditions out there on the ranch. As a teacher, I was very concerned about the education of our 4 children, so the children and I, we moved to Spearfish in the early 1900s. I was very active in the community, and I got involved in something called the Red Cross. It was just getting started, and it was providing assistance for those who had served in World War I. And as you know, with life, just as we're minding our own business, lo and behold, it's taken away from us all. After a severe coughing bout, I could not be revived. They thought I had a blood clot that went to my brain. But again, there were no autopsies to confirm it. Unfortunately, I was 54 years old. My son was grown, but our daughters were only 18, 16, and 14, 2 of which, along with their husbands, are buried next to me in the Kimball burial plot. Thanks for stopping by. For the curious, my husband did remarry and had 4 other children. And he developed a family burial plot out there on the ranch and is buried there. Remember, even when life seems to present a tragedy, life always provides for our needs. Incline itself verdantly true.
My name is Alden Howard Hobbs. I was born March 1924 in the town of Buffalo, South Dakota. In 1932, the family moved down to Spearfish. Being one of 8 children and growing up in the Depression, life could be pretty hard. I remember many evenings where we sat for supper with nothing more than flour and water to eat. I remember one time when my brother and I found a box of food in an alleyway. We couldn't believe our eyes, and I tell you, I still firmly believe it was a gift from God. I attended Spearfish High School and graduated in 1942, just a few months after Pearl Harbor. I decided to join the Merchant Marines, and travel the world, and sail the 7 seas, and do my part for the war. After the war, I returned home to Spearfish and partnered with Bunk Cooley, the Hobbs and Cooley Painting Company. And later on that same year, I married Miss Jane Fuller. And by 1950, we had 4 daughters between us. The 2 younger were born during the Great Blizzard of 1949 in the maternity hospital on Illinois Street. Dr. Clark was the attending physician, and those 2 babies were the tiniest things I'd ever seen. Just 4.5 pounds apiece. but with strong lungs, 'cause boy, they sure could howl. The painting business went well, and one of our more memorable projects was painting the sets for the Passion Play that ran for 70 years here, starting in 1939. Eventually, around 1968, Jane and I split up. 2 years later, 1970, I married a woman named Betty Jane Humphrey. And probably looking for a new start, we soon moved to Montana with not the most thought, started a restaurant. Well, the idea fizzled pretty quickly, and very soon we made the decision to move on up to Alaska. I lasted as a paint contractor up there for 2 years, but frankly, I didn't really care for the long, dark, cold winters that far north. In 1973, we made the decision to move back to Spearfish. Here, I landed the job as city building inspector, where I was put in charge of city buildings and grounds until 1981. During that time, I helped plan, design, and build Spearfish City campgrounds, the restrooms, and the horseshoe courts. And I also helped redesign and remodel old City Hall. During that period of time, I saw the growing need for housing for college students, and soon began building and renting out apartments to students, and did so until Betty and I retired. But because of my frugal ways, we moved to Beulah, Wyoming to avoid the property tax. I was frugal throughout my life. I enjoyed hunting and fishing, not just for sport, but as a way of providing food for my family. My daughters always tease me about my penny pitching ways. I can remember one time at my daughter's wedding when she complimented me on my nice new shoes. She only thought they were new, and I proudly took them off so that I could display the dates that I had purchased them, that I marked on the inside. I had a good life here in Spearfish. I belonged to the Snappers Club, was an honorary member of the Spearfish Fire Department, and even learned to fly.
Oh.
But for the busy life I had and all the things I wanted more to do, God had a different plan for me. I was diagnosed with cancer and passed away April of 1990. And so ends my story. But I have a quote that I want to tell you that was my mother's favorite, and one I think still has an important message. There is a destiny that makes us brothers. None goes his way alone. All that we put into the lives of others comes back into our own. I thank you all for coming out and seeing me.
All right, and we have one more stop. It's just around the loop over to almost straight across. And please note the balloons are indicating the grave sites of the people that are presenting.
I'm the blue.
Good to see you. First, I want to tell you how honored I am that you came to hear my story this evening. Second, I want to tell you that while my grave is here at Rose Hill Cemetery, right over there by those balloons, I was not born in Spearfish. I was not raised in Spearfish. I never worked in Spearfish, and I did not die in Spearfish.
But you got buried in Spearfish.
Yet here I am. Why is that? Well, there is a very good reason, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But first, I'd like to start at the beginning. I was born Genevieve Aurelia Duchesne on May 29, 1912, at St. Ambrose Hospital, rather St. Joseph's Hospital in Deadwood. When I was 5 years old, all the other neighborhood kids were heading off to school, but I wasn't quite old enough. There was no kindergarten. So my mother spoke to the nuns at the new St. Ambrose Catholic School and asked if they would consider admitting me anyway. They were not 100% on board with that idea, but they decided that if I had any issues, I could just repeat the first grade the following year. But my mother assured them there would be no problems, and she was right. Not only did I not need to repeat the first grade, I graduated from high school when I was just 16 years old. After high school, I earned degrees in mathematics and economics from South Dakota State College in Brookings. I was only 20 when I graduated from there. Then I moved to Piedmont, South Dakota, where I started my teaching career. I taught math and social studies at the local high school there. Now, I will admit there were some challenges. I was barely older than my students, and at only 5'2" and 90 pounds, most of my students towered over me. But I was not intimidated in the least, no ma'am. And I received a 9-month teaching contract where I earned $60 a month. Now, I might be the math teacher, but you can do the math on that. It was not very much. And there was to be no going home on the weekends, no sir. They expected me to stay in town and be part of the community, and that's what I did. I taught in Piedmont for 3 years before returning to Deadwood in 1936 to help care for my ailing parents and to teach at Deadwood High School. That was also the year that I met my future husband, Paul Acroft, at a National Guard convention in Lead. Paul and I married in 1943, just before he headed off to serve in World War II. We married on November 1st, 1943, All Saints' Day, and we needed special permission from the Catholic Church in order to be married on a holy day. We also needed special permission to be married in my dying mother's hospital room. Permission was granted, of course, and I still remember how the nuns hung new curtains in the room to make it look a little extra special that day.
Woo.
During the war, I served as principal of Deadwood High School, acting principal for a short time. After the war, my brother and I inherited our family business, Deadwood Granite and Marble Works. But my brother lived in California, so Paul and I ended up running the monument shop. The company made headstones that are on display at cemeteries all around the Black Hills, including here at Rose Hill. And it was a family business for 120 years.
Wow.
Now, it was not always easy. I still remember back in 1933 during the Great Depression how my father had been paid for a job and he deposited the money in the bank on his way home from work. A bank holiday was declared the next day and that particular bank never reopened. So you can imagine how challenging it was for everyone. But he kept the business going, and sometimes he even accepted items for trade when people couldn't pay him with money. Now, returning again to the 1940s, in 1946, Paul and I were managing this family business, and I was expecting the first of our 3 children. So I took a step away from teaching for several years, and I returned to teaching again in 1963 when all those 3 kids were in high school. They were born very close together, very much baby boomers. Several years later, Lead and Deadwood schools combined, and it was decided that Lead would be the location for the high school. Well, I never had a driver's license. So I opted to take a job at Deadwood Junior High so that I could continue to walk to work. And I continued teaching until my retirement in 1977. So why am I here at Rose Hill? Well, the answer is pretty simple. My mother, Marion, often accompanied my father on his visits to cemeteries in the Northern Hills, and Rose Hill was simply her favorite. After she died, my father purchased 18 lots so the entire family could be buried together. And when I died in Deadwood in the spring of 1993, I was laid to rest here too, knowing that I was where my family most wanted to be. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.
I'm here.
In case you didn't catch, that was about her grandma.
Hi there.
Hello.
Well, my name is Winfield Scott Copas, like the general. But everybody called me Scotty. I was born in Net City, Jasper County, Missouri, 1908. My father worked in the copper mines, developed miners' consumption. His doctor advised him to rig up a covered wagon of sorts and gather up us two boys and move away. And we lived off the land. We'd camp by a creek and catch fish to eat or trade for food. But my father continued to sicken. And one day he said, boys, I'm dying. And he laid down on a bench and passed away. It was the day before Christmas.
Oh, my.
We located my mother and we grieved with her. And she set out to marry a string of men, 3 or 4 as I recall. And I was beaten fairly regularly. My growing up years was tough. Well, my mother moved my brother and me to Lead to go to school. And one day she threw me out of the house. I was on the edge of Lead. A couple other boys come up to me and said, where do you live? And I said, well, I ain't got a home. So their family took me in for a time. My brother Whitley, he got a job working in a cafe in Rapid City, and I went down there with him and found a job at the bakery in town. And I'd sleep under a railroad trestle next to the cafe. Well, one day, a truant officer caught me because I wasn't in school. They took me to the training school in Plankington. I was a kitchen helper there, made bread, rolled. Then I got a job at the bakery in Plankington. And then I started boxing. Now, not everybody can make boxing and baking combined. But you know, I was able to pull it off. I had a certain amount of success boxing. Won more than I lost, got recognition statewide and beyond. I boxed out of Sioux City. Then on to Chicago, Madison Square Garden. I met some rough characters in Chicago. One of them tried to get me to throw a fight. I got out of town on the floorboards of a car. Met a gal in Plankington, Helen Gillis. We got married. I was 19. Had 2 sons, one of them stillborn. When that marriage ended, I moved back to the Black Hills. Got another job at a bakery. And I met this woman, Billy Ann Smith. I called her Billy. She said I had bright blue eyes and a charming smile. What are you thinking? We was married in Deadwood, 1935. Counting the bakeries in Rapid City, Plankington, and Lead, and Spearfish. I
was a baker for 60 years when I retired in 1972. We had a good life together. Lovely family of 2 girls and 2 boys. I always loved the outdoors. Took my boys hunting and fishing. We brought back deer, rabbits, and pigs to eat. And I enjoyed a moment of fame. I caught a 9-pound, 12-ounce Loch Levin trout, tying the state record with some California guy. Had my picture in the paper. 5.5 pound fly rod, live minnow, number 7 hook. Sunrises and sunsets. Television, movies, books, rainbows, wildlife on Crow Peak. Those are all things Billy and I enjoyed together. She maintained I was a self-made man and had done well in life. And I figured when I met her, I had plenty of reasons to live. Thank you. We really want to thank you for coming out and risking getting rained on. And before you go, give us money.
Ooh, subtle.
Because a baker could always use more dough.
Thank you all for coming. We do take donations for the Matthews Opera House if you feel so free to give some. And I apologize for his abruptness.